Bonjour, and welcome to the WARC Podcast. I'm Rica Facundo, Managing Editor for Asia Pacific at WARC, and the host of today's very first Cannes Lions special episode, and the reason why I started this with a bad French accent. Anyway, you might have guessed from the jaunty French music that we are officially in the south of France at Cannes Lions. This week, the WARC editors are delivering 5 episodes of fresh insights and interviews with the brightest minds in marketing. That's a new episode every day from Monday to Friday this week. Be sure to tap follow on your favorite podcast platform to get new episodes as they drop and share the good news with a colleague. Grab yourself a croissant and get ready for some fantastic discussion. Today, we're talking about the role of creativity in a world with dual audiences and how to persuade humans versus machines based on new research from Jellyfish and INSEAD Business School. We have BYD's superb journey from homegrown Chinese brand to global automotive super brand and lessons in localizing global brands from Heineken. But before we meet our first guests, a quick message from our sponsor.
Retail media continues to grow, but marketers still struggle to measure its wider business impact. Research by Circana revealed that 75% of CPG retail media campaigns drive impact beyond the initial retailer, but fewer than 20% of marketers measure those effects holistically. With AI-powered marketing mix solutions like Liquid Mix, Circana helps brands move beyond siloed reporting to better understand incrementality, cross-channel impact, and the true business value of retail media. Download the latest insights today at circana.com/walk.
Okay, let's get to the news. I'm joined by our senior editor, Anna Hamill. Anna, what's making the headlines today?
Hey Rica, it's day one, but things are already heating up. The juries have been hard at work, so let's dig into some of the key things to watch out for today, as several awards categories will announce winners this evening. So that's Monday evening local time here in France. The entries are already live on lovethework.com, so listeners can check those out right now. And for those keeping a close watch on the shortlists, you can expect to see those on lovethework.com at 9 a.m. Central European Time each day as they drop. Today, we can expect to see winners announced for audio and radio, pharma, creative brand, outdoor health and wellness, print and publishing, and creative B2B. So there's going to be a lot of people kicking off Cannes Lions with a celebration this evening. Award winners for various categories will appear on lovethework.com after that specific awards show finishes at approximately 10 p.m. local time. These stories are brought to you by WARC News, our free daily email newsletter. Go to walk.com/feed to read more during Cannes Lions.
Creative work is no longer judged only by human audiences and juries. It is increasingly filtered, ranked, and interpreted by AI systems as well. On the Cannes Lions stage today, INSEAD and Jellyfish revealed new research investigating creativity's role in persuading machines versus humans. Based on 480 ads previously entered in Cannes Lions, this research reveals that ads that score well with AI are, on almost every occasion, different from those that connect with humans. Joining me to share the highlights of their research are effectiveness experts Tom Roach, VP of Brand Strategy at Jellyfish, Natasha Wallace, Chief Solutions Officer at Jellyfish, and David DuBois, who is the Associate Professor of Marketing at the INSEAD Business School. Hey guys, welcome to the WARC Podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, let's go into this exciting new piece of research. So your research reveals that the top 10 ads preferred by AI versus humans are almost completely different. This suggests we're heading towards a bifurcated creative landscape. In which ways do ads preferred by AI differ from those preferred by humans? Tom?
So ads preferred by humans, I think we know what that's about. It's about emotion, storytelling, attention-grabbing ideas, and it's about the whole thing. Humans interpret the whole thing when they see an ad. The models do things differently. They process things differently. They're more interested in the detail. They're more interested in descriptions. And there's some really interesting differences that David's research has unpicked. But basically, 2 pretty different interpretations of advertising. And that's going to give us a really interesting problem, I think, as we progress.
David, what surprised you about this research?
So 2 things. Number one is when we looked at these 480 ads, we had the rankings and we had the ratings of effectiveness by humans, and we simply asked the LLMs what they thought about for the same ads. And what we found was 0 correlation. right? So which really suggests that AI and human have different processes, information processing systems that they operate with. So when we look at the differences between what AI like versus what humans like, we really find that AI, as Tom mentioned, things that are very descriptive. Like things that the product, like ads where the product is featured, and also like ads where real people are featured. When we look at ads that are preferred by humans, it goes back to emotions. It also goes back to storytelling. So when you look at the narratives, does the ad have a beginning, a middle, and the end? We find that that's preferred by humans over AI.
What you said, Tom, and what you said, David, this kind of two interpretations of advertising, these two tracks. I mean, that's a story as old as time, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the rational side and the emotional side. And then you need to do both, but we might over-index on the other because of AI. Natasha, what do you think about this kind of direction that we're going in? What does the research kind of either inspire you, scare you? Like, what are your feelings about this research?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges that our clients and brands face is, do I need to create assets or do I need to build my brand world so that it's machine legible? And it's not a black and white binary decision. I think what we need to start to think about now is true journey planning, where it's not, from discovery into evaluation into purchase per se, but it's thinking about what message do we want to convey through a particular format or through a particular channel, and getting comfortable with the fact that might not be model preferred. That might be something that, as the guys have said here, it's incredibly emotive, narrative driven. It's something that's going to be very appealing to a human being. And you just have to know and understand the corresponding message that you then have for models to be able to interpret that and where you want that to exist. And it starts to expand our universe. It's not just what we say, it's how our, what we're terming the influence mix, how your brand and your brand message is echoed and conveyed in all of these other places and by other voices, not just your own. So actually, it's unifying marketing. It's bringing us back together where we think about, brand and demand, media and creative coming together, but also how we leverage our partnership networks, how we leverage the creator network. Like that for me is so thrilling because we kind of separated ourselves for a little bit and we're forcing ourselves to come back together as a result.
So I think this shift is going to impact all brands broadly, but there are some categories that will be more impacted. The categories such as luxury and premium advertising, which you mentioned, which really requires that, the more subtle visual codes that might not be picked up by LLMs. Can you explain that a little bit more in depth, Tom?
In terms of the codes that are being picked up by the models in luxury, I mean, this was David's research actually on this, but I think I think the general point is a really interesting one, which is this thing of the models aren't so interested in the sort of spaces between things. They're very interested in the specifics and the detail. And I think we could go pretty wrong if we decide, though, that we're going to do two completely different things, if we split things, if we bifurcate. I think we've seen this before in marketing a couple of times where we've kind of decided that things are separate and different. And as Tash was saying, if we can unify and create more of a sense of the whole, I think we're going to do better from this. So I think there's a bit of a watch out here about the kind of falling into a sort of separating things out, there's a sort of trap there. But David, do you want to talk about the luxury point?
Sure. No, absolutely. I think, one of the things that we discovered was the way that models understand desirability is very different from humans. And so what we did is at the asset level, went back to what we know luxury cues work to create, to foster desirability among humans. So you can think about white space background. You can think about slow motion. You can think about having an array of other different cues. And so we know that for humans, these cues work. When we put them into the model, we actually found either no effect or sometimes reversed effects, right? And so what this suggests is that there are certain kinds of ads where you have this tension between AI and humans. So to go back to the point of that Tash was making, and the question becomes like, how do I blend the cues for human and for AI like within the same ad? And this is the good news is it's feasible. I think it forces brand to go back to their own assets that sometimes don't know that these assets right now influence the models, and engage in a brand audit or an asset audit. Like, what are the LLMs thinking about my different ads, my different assets online?
A couple of the kind of the commonalities are distinctive brand assets and category entry points. So really fundamental brand building, creative communication tools that we've known about for a long time. And I think that's a point of commonality that we really need to all kind of get around, I think.
That's a good question for Natasha, because you were talking about kind of, there's either or, bringing it together again, story as old as time. Can you talk about how that hybrid approach looks like in practice? I mean, Tom mentioned a few, for example, going back to the fundamentals, category entry points. Anything else that we need to watch out for so that we can build that hybrid approach?
Yeah, we found some really interesting discoveries through the use of our platform sharer model. We saw that YouTube is cited 1 in 4 times across categories. So YouTube is a really important source for LLMs. It's also an incredibly important platform for people. So thinking about how the role of video, which is an incredibly rich surface to convey your brand or your product, can do the job of something emotive, and then something a little bit more functional becomes really, really important. So thinking of your platform strategy and your own ecosystem outside your website or your app or your shop front, for example, becomes super important. We've also seen, and this is really where LLMs and the kind of the fundamental science that sits behind models, they look for consumer consensus. They really want to be able to validate an answer that they generate. So how other people actually speak about a brand, reviews, recommendations, third-party and impartial voices speak about your brand matters. That means actually going back to brass tacks when it comes to how do we foster advocacy? How are we making sure every part of the experience with our brand, whether that's walking in and trying on a shoe in a physical outlet or engaging in a social campaign, how are we making sure that we're creating positive experience that then somewhat ripple out and have a huge impact over our brand as well? Tom's point around context or kind of category entry points is so important. We've already been able to prove that when we look at how a model relates a product to particular category entry points, we've actually translated those into media targeting parameters and seen an immediate impact in positive revenue and return on ad spend. And for me, that helps us understand that actually understanding when people enter our category and why they would buy our product and making messaging that allows us to really speak to those points is going to benefit both audiences, and it's seeking those out. How do I think about structuring my messaging and structuring the places in which I kind of distribute those messages in a way that is going to have a dual purpose, but then the creative asset itself may lean towards one or the other.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the term that you're using for this is contextual brand architecture. Tom, maybe can you elaborate on what this new type of brand strategy means for brands today, especially as they try to navigate the digital landscape, which is much wider than traditional advertising?
I think it's obviously a developing area, and so I'm not going to be able to be definitive about exactly what does it mean for brand strategy. I think it means thinking more broadly about the ecosystem that you're creating for. I think it means thinking more about systems, probably less about kind of the approach which is just creating award-winning human creative kind of fireworks. I think it's more about creating sort of really consistent ongoing systems and engineering them really smartly. I mean, I know that sounds a little bit vague, but it's what we can't do is have sort of specialists who are somebody who's only interested in organic social, or somebody who's only interested in content or kind of award-winning creativity. I think we have to develop all these things in systems so that they're consistent across the piece rather than kind of little silos, because the models love consistency.
They love consistency, and I also think, Tom makes a good point there around, we're coming from an era where we might have one big blockbuster brand asset or platform that we rely on a TV commercial to really bring that to life, and then we have cut downs that we deploy across across digital environments. I think what we have to start to think about is how that platform manifests in different ways. You can't really, repetition erodes a brand now. And if you think a model is able to very quickly read everything about your brand from a multitude of sources in the moment to generate a response. If you don't have a diversity of messaging out there that brings that platform to life across all of these different moments, need states, whatever it is that appeals to the end human being, then you're going to come across as flat and one-dimensional. So this idea of having something that is really appealing and blockbuster, but then knowing how you can have that sustain your brand in high-frequency environments over multiple years and appeal to many different sessions that people are going to have in digital spaces, that becomes the true challenge. And then that's exciting because it breaks you out of thinking about tentpole campaigns or you're always on being separate. It actually starts to force us to think about what does our brand need to stand for the long term, and then what are the vehicles that are going to bring that to life.
It's actually quite liberating and quite exciting for the creative potential for brands and how they reach customers. So last question, David, I'm going to leave that with you. You were leading this research. So what is the one thing that you want people to take away from this as they think about how they evolve their strategies?
I think the basic takeaway of that research, there are many different parts, but the basic really takeaway is that human and AI process things differently. And there are actually, when we look at the research and our findings, there are three main differences, right? So the first one is that humans are profoundly heuristic-based, right? So we look for cues, we go for speed. We don't know how to process all the information that is out there, and so we need shortcuts for the 35,000 decisions that we make daily. But the AI doesn't have this problem, right? And so they go second by second. They slice the videos. They slice our messaging. They look at our tones in a very different way. And so this is much more systematic compared to heuristic. The second is that we are, as humans, we're craving for symbols, right? So we love stories. AI doesn't have that, right? So AI is much more about the description, the hierarchies, the context that is out there, right? And I would say that the third one goes back to this idea of context, right? Do you focus on the context versus the product? So kind of give you an example, maybe last food for thought, is if you're a high-end jewelry brand, do you focus on the context in which people are going to approach your products, most likely engagement, wedding, etc., or do you focus the storytelling on the product heritage, the craftsmanship, etc.? And our research shows that actually there's a way to reconcile this, which is you need to do both, and you need to do both in a very skillful way to appeal to these two audiences.
Not either or, both in this new world that we are navigating. And on that note, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Congratulations again on your fantastic session at Cannes.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you're listening to the WARC podcast, you're already tuned into what's defining the future of marketing. And there's never been a better time to land your own thought leadership in partnership with Lions Advisory. Lions Advisory works with your brand to craft evidence-led narratives that capture the attention of the industry, all built on decades of expertise you can trust. From WARC, Contagious, FE, and Cannes Lions. Whether you're looking to launch your own WARC report, own the moment at Cannes Lions, or cut through with podcasts or webinars, Lions Advisory can help you shape the conversation. Get started now at lions.co/thought leadership.
China's second Zhuhai wave is reshaping Western markets, and for brands, understanding the competition coming out of China is now a strategic imperative. Earlier on the Cannes stage, the China Outbound session presented research by Seoul for Profit Advisory, supported and available on WARC, by the way. It includes a new model blending rapid innovation, credible brand promise, and culturally resonant storytelling. Today, we're talking to experts who understand the power of China's brand on the world stage. We have Sir Martin Sorrell, who is the founder and executive chairman at S4 Capital, and we have Siew Fu, is the CEO of Seoul for Profit Advisory and developed the research we're discussing today. And we have Stella Lee, executive VP and CEO of BYD Americas, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Siew, one of my favorite phrases from internet culture lately is, "You met me at a very Chinese time of my life." How does this phrase also capture the business landscape for brands? Are we at an inflection point?
Yeah, I certainly think that we're at an inflection point. I mean, what is fascinating about this phenomenon is not manufactured. It's really just driven from young people in the West, posting videos of themselves, drinking hot water, wearing sleepers, buying LaBubu toys, and creating a movement just genuinely. And I think what is fascinating is, the first China shockwave is about price, but this is really about meaning. And we're seeing consumers around the world identifying with the values and the culture of China, and I think that's fascinating, and it's really at an inflection point.
People drinking hot water in the West. I love that. How that's a thing. I'll stay with you, Siew, Ting, because you talked about the China shockwave, right? Before it was about price, now it is about meaning. And you were saying that this is part of a new model of brand growth coming out of China called Chuhai. Can you explain to our listeners, what does that mean and why should Western brands be paying attention?
Yeah. I mean, Chuhai basically in Chinese means going global or going to the sea or going overseas. And, tracing back to Chinese entrepreneurs, it's really an outcry when Chinese entrepreneurs go global and really bring their brand to global in itself. The interesting thing is they're not just going global and going to the sea, they're really going it with soul. And the fundamentals are quite simple. It's really about deep cultural insight, cultural fluency, but ability to also demonstrate that and prove it in the P&L. And there are many, many great examples with the likes of BYD and also LaBubu. But I think the great example of LaBubu is, it's taken its cultural tension of imperfection and celebrating that and actually really creating a global scale phenomenon. So should Western marketers be afraid of this? The culture outbound,
be scared, shouldn't
the hurdles, the hurdles are no different, when what we see in China, but also the Western marketeers. And I think they should be really standing up and watching out for that. Yeah.
That's a great segue to you, Sir Martin. I mean, you are a veteran. You've seen brands come and go.
You paint me as an old man. Very nice. What a nice way to get this time in the morning and be told you're a veteran.
Well, anyway, but you've I remember you said long time ago, like, watch China, watch the brands coming out of China. People didn't take that seriously back then, but now everyone is paying attention.
Learn Chinese is what I said. I said learn Chinese, learn code, and now I'm saying learn Spanish.
Learn Spanish.
Okay. Watch out for Latin
I should have
America.
also learned Chinese a long time ago. I only know Hun Hao, now I know Chuhai, right? Anyway, but, you've seen, this play out. What role do you see that innovation, this rapid experimentation coming from the success of China, including, technology, what can the rest of the world learn from these advantages, and why must we be paying attention now?
I think what we should all focus on is the geopolitical issues. So what is the reason why China is going global so aggressively? So it's sort of, what's really interesting is since President Trump threatened to introduce tariffs, not at the level that he forecast at the beginning in the White House garden, but at the lower levels, China's exports have rocketed. Now, why is that? That's because companies like BYD, like Huawei, not so much maybe LaBubu actually, interestingly, but other companies as well, ByteDance and others, have been denied access, particularly to the US market, because the US cannot stand the idea that there's another superpower, it's a G2 world or a multipolar world. And in that world, Chinese companies which have exhausted the opportunities or seriously explored the opportunities of their domestic market, where consumption, is an issue, because the government wants to encourage people to consume more and reduce their savings. But the companies are switching to global penetration. So if you take a company like Huawei, for example, it's staggering to remember that 50% of their sales come from China, 25% from the rest of the world, and 25% from the GCC, actually, which, given what's happened with Iran, poses other issues as well. But the fundamental issue is that China, denied access in many areas in the US, has had to go to Latin America, to Africa, to the Middle East, to Europe and to the rest of Asia. And if you look at the biggest trade partners of most of the countries that I've just mentioned, China leads in Latin America, in Africa, in the Middle East. Saudi, its biggest trade partner is China. Its biggest security partner is the United States. So you have this sort of bifurcated approach where a balance is required. And this is what's really driving, I think, the Chinese global expansion. The basis of it, as Sue said, it started around price, but now it's really morphed into technology and innovation and speed and agility. And when you pose the question, should Western companies worry about it? They should. And what's really interesting is that where have we seen greatest AI transformation? It's in those sectors, those verticals, where there is an existential threat. And if you take the case of autos, the biggest existential threat is BYD. They can produce an EV for $25,000, an AV with God's eye for $10,000. And this puts tremendous pressure on the established manufacturers. And they have to move at light speed, at the sort of speed that BYD is comfortable with moving, in order to be agile. We're also seeing it in financial services with the fintech platforms, and to some extent with packaged goods because of pressure on pricing and rising commodity prices. But surely the existential threat is key.
Stella, what lessons can be learned from BYD's globalization playbook, including its domestic strategy and adapting that brand marketing strategy to be successful, not just in domestic markets, but in international markets?
So we are a technology company. I think a big thing when we do marketing, we need to always back to the root and tell the story about the technology, about the innovation. But sometimes we have a lot of cool stuff in Asia. We came to Europe, we try to duplicate same story. It did not work, because then we learn it's every country you go, you need to respect local culture. You need to use local culture, local way, almost can say a local language to tell the high-tech story. So in the past 2 years, our local team grew up so fast. Then now they integrate with all the cool idea, innovation idea to tell the technology company, to tell the story about our cool car. So it has been very successful.
What elements of the Chinese brand identity are you keeping, and what elements of the local markets you're getting into that you need to adapt to?
So, for example, in China, everybody act like an engineer. If this is a technology car, you need to talk about the spec. You need to talk about all the cool feature. Then the people is really, for example, we have the car. They like to know what's the horsepower. What does this mean? How you make this horsepower? But here, the people more care about the experience. They care about maybe culture. Then they are not so engineering mindset. Then they want to say what's benefit to me, and then then the lifestyle is very different. So then if you are too aggressive, then they don't care, or maybe did not hurt them. So you need to really use their mindset to adapt. Maybe the speed car can help them. It's not with just give maybe certain place they can benefit them. And then also for example, we're launching the Z9 GT, and there is E-Cube platform. The most people response to our technology is E-Cube parking. So because in Europe, parallel parking is challenging. We don't have space, but our car can head in and the tail glass in. This feature makes people, wow, it's a cool car. Then we do autonomous parking. The parking slot here is a challenge. Then you say, you go to the narrow road, we can do the crab walk. Then you can side work and move in the very narrow street. And at the same time, in the parking lot, you do autonomous parking. This makes people, wow, cool car. Yeah, very different.
I need to go and try this cool car.
Yeah.
So last question, because BYD has always been, I guess, maybe role model or poster child for the strength and power of Chinese innovation, taking over the global stage. Speed and agility has always been a key part of that playbook. But in the next era, what would you add to that equation? Speed, agility plus, is it meaning? Is it emotion? Is it culture? What would you add to that?
I think everything. now we spend a lot of time in utilize the social media to really also understand the local people's needs. Then we blend all the, for example, in the past 3 months, we have a Middle East conflict, the oil price increasing. Then immediately a lot of attention to electric car. Then our marketing team came out some good ideas, and don't talk about per 100 kilometer how many fuel you're saving. Talking about if for the housewife, then what does this mean? They come out if you drive a BYD car, maybe 1 kilometer, you can have 1 espresso saving. Then if you drive 100 kilometer, you have the whole family, you can save big meal. So this is, we push this out, then it's very impactful. And then our Google search is reserved high. So with this one, is for BYD ourselves, I think from marketing, we want to generate a lot of emotional connection with our brand. But at the same time, on the logistics, on the quality, on the more model, then with this one, we can continue grow our market rapidly.
Just to add to that, I think what Stella is doing and Jose as well is, as BYD moves up the value chain with premium product like Dancer and others to come, they're investing much more in marketing and, as Stella said, in local cultural relevance. I think those days of doing things from Shenzhen or Shanghai or Beijing have gone, and they're understanding now that what needs to be done is much more on a local, regional basis, particularly given what's going on in the world with fragmentation.
And that's what makes me very excited, right? You've got the agility plus culture and meaning, and that's an unstoppable force. And I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for joining us on the WARC podcast. Enjoy the rest of your Cannes week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You.
From tapping into Korean hospitality norms to infiltrating Taiwan's skincare culture, respecting local definitions of courage, beauty, or community can unlock global relevance. Identifying real cultural tensions and understanding local consumers is essential to making a global brand feel locally relevant. Joining us to discuss their approach, fresh from the Cannes Lions stage, are Stephan Schwarz, Executive Creative Director at LePub Singapore, and Dana Katz, Integrated Communication Director at Heineken. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, let's get into this amazing session I just watched. So the crux of your session at Cannes Lions is about cultural relevance, which is my favorite topic, and particularly in targeting a diverse region like APAC. But Heineken is a global brand born out of Amsterdam, and both of you are outside the cultures you're marketing to. What is one unconscious bias or behavior you had to unlearn to understand how to market in Asia? Stephan, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right. I moved to Singapore 5 years ago, and I had to reset my own set of values and skills and understanding. I feel what is very important is that I love this region. I was very lucky to do very transformative work in my previous experience in Singapore. One thing that I learned is that trust the creatives that are from this region. Right? An idea is universal, but the nuance of the idea is regional, local, and very, very important. I was telling Dana yesterday, when I go on shoots, I, for example, don't have an opinion on casting. I don't have an opinion on acting because that's not where I come from. That's not what I can judge. And I have very good creatives that come from this region and that tell me, Uncle, you're tripping. This is good, right?
Uncle, yes.
Yes. So I feel that is very, very important. And I feel the wonderful richness of Asia is really something that blows my mind every morning, because you can come back with such unique insights. I did most of my career in Europe, and of course there's difference. I'm a German, I lived in France. Of course there's massive difference between both cultures, but they are aligned on Christmas, they're aligned on a lot of values and a lot of things in the market. There is literally a world between a Singaporean and a Cambodian, between a Vietnamese from the north and a Vietnamese from the south. They don't test the same way, by the way. So I feel that
the awesome thing is that I learn stuff every day. And then I hope that I can contribute to highlight the incredible richness of the region through the work we're doing with Heineken.
Local trust. I love that. So we have Uncle Stephan, Auntie Dana. What's something you had to unlearn?
I'm way too young to be called an auntie. Let's start there. But no, I think the one thing I want to share is that whilst I'm representing the Heineken brand today, we have an incredibly global and diverse team. And something that we really value at Heineken is what we call radical collaboration. So when I get a piece of content or some creativity to review and approve, I actually really embrace it when it makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. And it's at that moment that I sit up and pay attention. So when I feel deeply uncomfortable, that's when I sit up and pay attention. And we really need to lean into the insight and expertise of our team. The other thing I just wanted to share is I think it's incredibly easy as a marketeer to fall into the trap of trying to find commonalities. So sitting at a global office, you could easily assume, oh, there's one APAC, there's one Asia. And there couldn't be anything more further from the truth. There is no one Asia.
I wholeheartedly, 100% agree with that. But that's a good segue to my next question. Stephan, this one is for you. We talk about the importance of cultural relevance or local insight, but that by nature is very niche, right? Very true to a particular market, a particular community. But when you need to scale, it has to also be, bigger than that to become broadly relevant. How do you handle this paradox? And I know that you ran that campaign, a Lunar New Year campaign that you ran across 3 Asian markets. How do you handle that?
More than 3 Asian markets.
Oh, more than 3? Okay.
Yeah. It was really, I think it was 5 or 7 markets. I don't want to lean, but you're right. This is incredibly difficult. And I think something that you need to approach is the fact that you are welcome here, but you're not from here. And I feel that if you take the example of festive means nothing because it's Christmas in Korea, it's Tet in Vietnam, it's Lunar New Year. In Malaysia and Singapore, it's a hybrid things of traditions, right? But first, it's the number 1 selling beer moment for every brand. And the second thing is that we're not a local brand. And when you're not a local brand, first, you need to be incredibly respectful. But also, you can allow yourself to look at culture and have a POV on it. And that POV for festive was that this sacred moment that has one commonality is that families are getting together, is being interrupted by technology. And again, it's not just the Gen Zs, it's also the uncles and the aunties that are on their phone all the time. So we said, okay, this is something that Heineken does globally, which is to say technology interrupts a moment of social life. So we tapped into that moment that is common, which is the family reunion. And we created this funny dialogue between people that are a bit disconnected from that festive moment and are reconnected through the device of beer.
So the sameness is the occasion, right? And you kind of have local nuance in that execution. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel what is important is that when you look at those films, there are cues that are probably invisible to an American or a European marketer, which is that, for example, in one of the scenes, we have some flowers that are uniquely used at festive in Vietnam and that are there as a subtle nudge. And then you have things that will be recognized to Malaysians as a festive occasion. And so even on a campaign that is one global campaign for a lot of countries, you still can put relevant touches that are signaling to consumers, hey, this is about me.
Stephan, let me stay with you and talk about this model, which you argue is about local teams, not central broadcast. What does this look like in practice? Can you walk me through how you develop one of your campaigns from brief to launch, and how is cultural insight embedded to every step of the process?
I will take the latest one, Rooftop Revival, because I feel it's a very good collaboration and a very good example of the model. So Rooftop Revival first comes from a global brief, which is that Heineken wants to put a spin on culture in a particular country, that is Korea. Then we work with the different teams in Korea in order to get a lot of insights about the country. those insights are then shared with the Heineken team locally and the LePub local, which I am. Then we elaborate on ideas, present them to global and local, and both local and global have a say on what is a good idea and what is not. And this results, and we talked about it today during our talk, in a healthy tension, because the local market will have a very strong POV, and the global team has a very strong POV, and then based on this, we develop a campaign. Rooftop Revival is something that is incredibly interesting, because everyone now watches K-drama, right? But what not everyone knows is that in most of the K-dramas, you will have a rooftop scene. And where someone kisses for the first time, declares their love, cooks, something happens. And something happens that is social life. And that obviously is something that is very interesting for Heineken, right? So what we did is simply to say, and then when you realize, oh, those roofs are actually super green as Dana's dressed today, then you say, we're Heineken. Let's do something about it. And then what we did is we revived these rooftops. And that gigantic red star that you see is not that opportunistic. It's actually a Pyeongchang. The Pyeongchang is the OG social network of Korea. It is a wooden bench in which people sit down and picnic in the outside and do their things. So we brought this back with a twist, because that's what Heineken does, with a red parasol, but also a cooling box, a Bluetooth-enabled speaker so that people could actually really reconquer these roofs and make them work. But all this is a 8-month process, collaboration, back and forth between Amsterdam, Seoul, Singapore.
Dana, you've said that when you're the most global beer brand, scale threatens closeness, and global fame can feel like distance. But everything that Stephan described has a sense of intimacy as well. How do you overcome that challenge at Heineken?
It's a great question. And I think before I go into the answer, it's important to recognize the strengths that come with being a global brand. The fact that you have scale, consistency, that builds a lot of trust and reputation. But at the same time, like you just said, it can challenge closeness and it can start to feel distant. And that's why for us, it's really, really important that we look at two key things. The first is a superior consumer insight. At the end of the day, when you crack an insight that's universal, that transcends borders. And the second thing is radical collaboration. Stephan has touched on it a few times, but at the end of the day, the way we work with our teams, with our agencies, and with our local partners ensures that everything we do really does bring to life those local nuances in a very culturally sensitive way.
What I love about your session is it talks about the ways of working, right? And collaboration is the heart of great creative work that pushes the boundaries and delivers work. But collaboration can be time-consuming, can be expensive. You want to localize in multiple markets. That, some could argue, is not efficient, right? It's more effective to just kind of have a global idea and then you just adapt. Can you talk through that tension, Dana, and how has taking this other approach actually driven more effective results for the brand?
Yeah, great question. And I think one thing to clarify is we're not a local brand, and we never do local for the sake of local, nor do we ever do anything hyper-local because we don't have the credibility to do that. What we do lean into is really our global consistency and scale, and that transcends campaigns or creativity. We've got amazing, recognizable, legendary executional equities. We've got capabilities that scale. We've got a framework that we call freedom in a framework. And we've got tons of processes and recipes for success, what we like to call repeatable models for success that do scale. At the end of the day, we supplement that with initiatives that really supercharge cultural relevance. So it really is a very fine balancing act, and it's a bit of a and rather than a this or that.
I love that. And I have this saying called same, but different. I'm going to add that to my repertoire. And on that note, thank you both for joining us on the WARC podcast. Congratulations on your great session at Cannes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
All right, that's all we have time for today. Thanks to all of the guests for their time and expertise. We'll be back tomorrow with our next special episode from Cannes Lions. Make sure you don't miss an episode of our Daily Can episodes by subscribing on your favorite podcasting platform. And to check out the rest of our content from Cannes Lions, check out warc.com. Thanks for listening and see you tomorrow.